Now you know if they're gonna do a show that is based out of the DMV, you know I'm checking it out, folks. Being a product of the DMV, you know it's a no-brainer here. So yeah, folks, let's jump into my review of the new series Swagger. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel today for another review. And today we're going to be reviewing the series Swagger, which is going to be releasing October 29th on Apple TV Plus. It is about 10 episodes. They're about an hour each. And frankly, you know, I got a lot of mixed thoughts about this one, but let's start with the basic background about this real quick. So this is brought to you by the executive producer Kevin Durant, KD, who's from the DMV out of Seat Pleasant, Maryland. Now the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia is not only just a way of recognizing this area, but it's a sense of pride from the people who are from this area. And there is a vast amount of talent. Some you know, some you may not know, but this area has its own identity, its own style, its own swag, pun intended. And you know, when you're going to represent that, and I'm being a product of this area as well, you know, I wanted to check it out. And then obviously with Kevin Durant name attached to it, it's definitely worth a look at to see what it's all about. But while this series is inspired by Kevin Durant's youth basketball experiences, it's not verbatim the things he's been through. There's absolutely, based on his story of what I know, yeah, there's traces of his story through it, but it's mostly its own story. You know, it stands on its own two legs. Quite frankly, with it being from the DMV, yes, they do go to Virginia, they do go down to DC, but they rarely reference other cities in the DMV. Like, yes, they reference Seat Pleasant, but they don't reference other things like Suitland, Capitol Heights, other big basketball cities that I'm sure he had rivalries with. So this film kind of stands on its own, and the time period for this is right before the pandemic, but yet the pandemic was coming. But so this series is about 14-year-old Jace, who's the next big NBA prospect, growing up in the DMV out of Seat Pleasant. You know, his biggest goals is to be the #1 ranked talent from out of the DMV. He wants to go down to the big tournament in Florida, which I'm gonna make this very clear. If you've ever played any bit of sports, whether AAU, Boys and Girls Club, whatever it may be, especially in my youth, especially around the 14-year-old period, Florida was the big trip. Everybody wanted to go to Florida. So like, while it seems very like small to say his big goal was to get to Florida, that was absolutely like one of the biggest goals, was to play ball in Florida. That's a huge goal for him. But yeah, he wants to be the #1 ranked prospect out of the DMV. He wants to play in the big tournament in Florida. And I'm pretty sure that's very common to what Kevin Durant's upbringing was in playing AAU and wanting to get to those big tournaments, because there's so many eyes on that tournament. Just recruits, opportunities, all sorts of things in playing in that tournament, that means the utmost to these kids. But other than that, you know, really quickly, the actor who plays Jace, Isaiah Hill, like, little homie has skills, and they surely puts it on display. Both his handling of the basketball, so like, if you want to say his choreography with basketball was on point. His acting I thought was pretty dope as well too. I was messing with him as our lead here. I was definitely behind his performances, and yeah, because he's 14, yes, things are going to come off cheesy because you're an adult looking at a kid and thinking you wouldn't have said that, or you wouldn't have acted that way, or whatever you may be. I thought he nailed it. It came off very genuine and authentic to me. So I was definitely behind on his journey for sure. But this series is really, I don't like feel it's for the adult audience. It's really for that teenage audience, that up and coming, inspiring, whatever your sport may be, basketball, football, whatever it may be. I think it's for that audience. I think, and if you're a big fan of Kevin Durant, especially within that age group, I think this is totally for you, because like, yeah, you know, I feel like this series kind of went through 2 to maybe 3 different stories. So for me, I felt like the continuity was a little bit off at times, and the toning was a little bit off at times. But I think for entertainment factor, you take the critic hack off and you just watch it pure for entertainment, it's not bad, especially if you are in that age group. I think you will absolutely enjoy this as well. But you know, when it comes down to the title swagger isn't just about what you do on the court, but it's what you do off the court. It's a lifestyle, and it's also the name of their team, DMV Swagger. And yeah, the drama was a little heightened at times. Things were cliche, but again, I was still entertained. And even the word swagger, you know, it's sometimes could be cliche, but I get what it means in using that name for the title of this show, and letting that be the theme of everything that's kind of going on here. So what else can I talk about here? So another few things is, although like again, this is influenced by Kevin Durant's upbringing within basketball, there's a big obviously imprint about things that he also had to endure, like social media, where like obviously he didn't have social media in this capacity when he was coming up, but like we see how social media plays a very pivotal part into one's career. Social media could be detrimental to self-esteem, your dreams, and we've seen Kevin Durant deal with that in the NBA level. So I think it was important for him to put that in here for this, so that kids can see how even at 14 years old, how this can play a part into, you know, everything what you're meant to, much like it does for him in his adult years in the NBA. So social media definitely has a big presence in this. You see tweets every other second, basically for all different intents and purposes, descriptors of what's happening on the game and whatnot. Because, you know, you don't have to be at the game in order to watch a game, because digital era. Speaking of DMV, you got some cameos for some DMV greats. Mike Beasley's one. You have Snoop from The Wire, which I will say that Baltimore is not part of the DMV, but everyone knows who Snoop is. And when they have these barbershop scenes, you know, basketball and barbershops, you know, that goes 1 and 1. Definitely take a look at the walls. You'll see a bunch of legends on the wall as well there too. But his coach, Ike, played by O'Shea Jackson, who was actually supposed to be Winston Duke's role, which I remember when they announced it some time ago. He was a player from the DMV, a great who never made it to the league, which there's tons of those people that exist from the DMV. So the shoes that he's filling is one that I can think of a few names that could be referenced to. But yeah, he's now coach, and he's responsible now for basically coaching DMV Swagger, but molding these young athletes into men, these young boys into men. And you know, he obviously based on his own experiences and both his lessons on and off the court, he is a pivotal part into these young players' career. With that being said, almost everybody has father issues in this. Like, everybody has daddy issues, and the fact that he has those relatable issues and these players do, that's how they kind of connect. So that's, you know, super important for him in his position as coach for this team. When you talk about the DMV culture, yeah, they reference mumble saws, they reference go-go, there's a little bit of the lingo, but that's like very surface level. They really didn't tap into the DMV lifestyle at all. Yeah, the AAU games, I think this was definitely the watered down version of how they are, because these games are huge. And like, once you get past AAU and you start talking about these Drew League games that be at Berry Farms, like, this is the identity of the DMV, and I'm surprised they didn't show that at all. This is way more chill. And funny thing is, this character Apocalypse Ann, now I have heard rumors about a person who goes through Seat Pleasant, who's basically homeless, but who does a lot of preaching about the apocalypse and religion and the return of God. And the fact that this character exists in here is pretty funny. So yeah, there must be some truth to that. That's why that is why that character is very pivotal in here. But yeah, going back to the DMV lifestyle, like, there's no display of urban clothing. Like, there's a bunch of clothing lines that are very synonymous with the sports world around here. Like, you can't even have you can't, like, some of these sports teams here, these young teams, whatever age it may be, everybody at some point was wearing something, one of these local urban hood clothing lines, hobo, shooters, all of them, and there's none of that in here. But there is a good display of black artists and the talents across the board, and like the music is really, really good. I have to add as well too. So honestly, with so much star power from the DMV, as much as they reference the DMV in this, a lot of people still isn't hip. Like people, I'm pretty sure out of 10 people, when I say the DMV, no one's gonna realize I'm talking about DC, Maryland, Virginia area. You know, the Washington DC metropolitan area. Like a lot of people still don't know. But there's so much star power both in and from this area. It's still mind blowing that people are still like learning. But I think this show is gonna help on that note. And they also didn't reference any other neighborhoods from the DMV. I think they mentioned only Seat Pleasant, if I'm not mistaken. So like they definitely went very, very chill in regards to the presentation and display of the DMV for whatever reason. But yeah, when you're talking about the toning of this, which I was talking about, so the beginning part obviously was like really circled all about Jace's desire to want to play basketball. And then it started to transition into this love and basketball feel, and you know, love interest in basketball. We know it's always going to be love and basketball here. And then after that, I feel like the show started to play around with some really heavy topics, like things that are like totally relevant to society nowadays. And I feel like they treaded really close to some, but never really went full tilt. And then by like the middle part of this season, they totally do racial discrimination, the protests, sexual assault, and more. Like they really went from like letting this be kind of, I'll say kind of easy, very light, and I don't know, we can almost say just a very easy tone to go for. But then things started to get very heavy, and I don't think you should avoid these things, but I think by how it changed, it really kind of caught me off guard, that I was like, oh, I didn't think they were actually going to dive into this. Because if you don't have these conversations, which I absolutely think you do, you almost can say this is a completely family friendly show. But with you adding these type of conversations and these scenes into it, then you do have to be sure for folks to be prepared for it, because some of it could be very triggering in itself. And as a black male, I can absolutely say that a few of these scenes, even at my age, I still was kind of just really like, I couldn't believe they were going in that route. And honestly, I feel like before that, this was only just basketball drama, rival teams, parents, coaches, all trying to be involved in the game, with money, fame, and all that sorts of different stuff. And then obviously the big blanketed thing with fatherhood being the constant theme for tons of different characters. So that's that. But then, yeah, I feel like maybe they ran out of basketball material to talk about. So that's where they were just like, okay, cool. We need to kind of transition into another storyline. And that's where some of these heavier topics came about. That's where the pandemic came into play. And it just kind of turned into a different show at some point. So, yeah. But other than that, I thought it was really interesting that one of the players' moms was just maliciously after the coach and trying to dig his secrets because of how much the kid admired the coach. So she felt like it was her job to find some dirt on him. I thought that was a very interesting, maybe unnecessary storyline that this story had. And yes, it had full circle to this arc, but I could have really did without it. But overall, the music was pretty good. The cinematography, especially with the court action, was pretty solid. I really think this young generation would love this show. I think it's totally for them. I think it's directed towards that audience. Episode 8 was my favorite. Episode 9 had a lot of heart. And then episode 10, I feel like it's just setting up for the next season, which if they do another season, I'm not sure what story they want to tell. I would have been cool with this being just one season, but you know, hey, if the young audience love it, then hey, do it. I think that the actor Isaiah Hill, who plays Jace, I think he did a really good job putting this show on his back, and alongside with O'Shea Jackson and some other folks too. There's really some interesting folks that you haven't seen in a while on screen in this show, and I think that together the cast really put together a really good show. for that young audience. So I was entertained as an adult, but I think the kids will love it. That's not even a question. I think they really love it. And of course, the word swagger, it directly points towards them. You know, my generation won't even say that word anymore, so I think it's perfect for them. But yeah, again, it will be on Apple TV Plus, folks. You can check it out. It is starting premiering October 29th. Jump in the comments, let me know your thoughts about this when you do. And as always, stay tuned for more movie reviews and series reviews, television reviews, all reviews very soon.